Welcome everyone to this week's IPLD Sync and Community meeting. It's March 27th, and as every 2 weeks, we go over the stuff that people have worked on or discuss any open agenda items or if you have questions. And today it's special because we even have a talk today. And I guess we just start with the talk. So yeah, I hand over to Jay Chris because he will tell us what he will be talking about and so on.
Cool. Thanks, Volker. Thanks for having me. Thanks for being here, Rod. Thanks for being here, everyone on the live stream. I am excited to share this new project I'm working on that has been in my head since, I don't know, like current form and since like 2010 or something before that. So I've been thinking about how to build this thing for a while, and some of the pieces kind of fell into place recently that made it something that one could hope to build. So there's a lot of stuff that's hard that you can't just do yourself, and there's a couple of ingredients that I mixed together to make this possible. But the thing that I think this brings to the conversation about IPLD data structures is that they can be packaged in a way where you're using it, you don't even know. So here you are as like a quick start user, and you're just npm installing a thing and doing stuff with it, and you can even like put it on your window if you're wild like that. And it basically worked right away when I just did this remix between a couple of these components that I'll talk about in a little bit. By worked right away, I mean, it took me like not too long, a month or so, to get essentially like a couch like implemented. And then some of the stuff that's neat about doing it with Merkle instead of couch is a whole bunch of efficiencies in the replication and all the provability that you get from kind of the stuff you have to do if you're going to get it's hard to make a Prolly tree, but if you're going to make one, then you may as well take advantage of it. So I put together a little presentation. The market I'm going after is like the one that people who maybe just graduated from school are in, right? It's like you're building an app and you need cool stuff about that. Like I didn't choose, it chose me, or maybe like in the macro picture, right? The fact that it's a local storage based, Merkle Prolly tree implementation means that, like, let's say you were doing a user profile page that you already had written, like you've got users, and now you want to add features to it. You could build an editor UI for the user where they do arbitrary stuff, save arbitrary state, and then that's just like a little Merkle cookie size thing that you have to keep on your backend to rehydrate that state for your build when you're building a profile page or something. So it allows you to add arbitrary features to your app and get to them from on the front end or the back end, and like extend whatever kind of data topology your app already has. That's a super easy thing you can do because you can drop new UI into pages and power it like via having this data be globally accessible. And I wasn't expecting it to be that easy. And then the other thing that's super, y'all know a lot about, right, is like, for instance, smart contracts and Filecoin both use a lot of Merkle. And so if somebody's like doing their own storage aggregator, they might use Fireproof for the way that they just like keep metadata around inside of the car files that they ship. And like same thing for anyone doing FVM contracts. That makes a lot of sense because you can sidechain it safely. And then I think that as a community, we could talk more about why proofs matter for AI. So like it just is the case that if you do the stuff the way we do it, then you can get like a whole bunch of, I guess, reproducibility. So people can rerun models with the same inputs and random seed, and then kind of like have tools that allow them to do that AI stuff. So yeah, I think it's going to be real big. But I've done this before, and I want to do like, I think it's going to be bigger than the last time, which was Couchbase. So I wanted to be like jQuery, like every app out there just does this because why wouldn't you? It's super easy. And then I'm not really trying to make money on your infra, right? Like let Web3 storage make that money. And then what I want is to just like unlock the stuff that I haven't written yet, right? So I want to build the community of users at like a basically like they're verified essentially. Um, and that's my short-term plan. But like the idea that that is long-term aligned with like the future of data DAOs and stuff that we might see in that world. So yeah, how it works. The it uses here, I'll do this. It uses Alan Shaw's Pale Clock and Michael's Probably Tree implementation. And I kind of tore into both of those to and this one to add like a bunch of edge case handling, and this one to tear out like the minimal core of it that I actually use. But what happens is events come in, like a writing a document change, key value change comes in, and then the causation is tracked in Allen's clock, which can like, you know, resolve forks, and it auto merges, right? If changes on different keys happen, it doesn't care about those. But basically how it does all that is outside of its purview. It's pretty cool how just the causal tracking gives you the ability then to like keep one of these probably trees around that corresponds to here, and then like advance it to here whenever you feel like it, and then query that one in memory, and like most of your blocks are already cached, and then like maybe put this one in your local storage cookie eventually. So you can have these probably trees, you know, they're just kind of like cheap forks of all these different update operations. So as you're resolving conflicts, you can get a view into what that full database state looks like real cheaply, because most of it you already have. And then, you know, y'all know what it probably looks like, but this is my bad art of trying to say that, well, it's just like essentially a V tree with leaves and internodes, but what makes it different is when it constructs itself. It doesn't matter the order of insertion, you're going to get the same Merkle root, and that hash is like enforced essentially. The reason it's deterministic but called Prolly is because the way these nodes decide on the cutoff boundary for the next block is based on their content. And so you could set like the threshold at which how much content is going to be next block making. So everyone's going to end up with the same thing, which makes all the other stuff in Couch way easy. Like the replication is just telling people about these, right? And if the blocks are accessible on like a gateway or something. I'll show a demo in a minute, but one of the first things I did when I was playing with it myself was, after I got the replication to cloud working, just delete local storage and refresh the page. And my app loaded just like one block at a time out of Web3 storage, and it worked. So there's optimizations to be done there. But that's logically what's happening. Both of these share a block store. You know, I guess like furthermore, before we care about the block store, the indexes are just a JavaScript function that can pull this chain. Since the last time you had an index head, and you know, run and be like, oh, this document, you know, gets indexed under this key, this document under that key. So you could do stuff like find people by zip code or whatever. And so we've got an open issue on this implementation to make the internode aggregations programmable. But once you do that, then you can do that really sweet like dynamic windowing queries where the is logarithmic cost, because most of the work is already memoized. And so you can do stuff like custom aggregations. What's the standard deviation of people's height off these profile records or whatever. Okay, so now we're down in the block store. All these things share a common block store. You could segregate out the views to a different block store if you don't want to replicate them. And the blocks get read individually. I wrote the whole thing on top of just key, like an in-memory key value, and then I wrapped my transactions in car files. So now every time you do an update, it's probably going to touch like XYZ number of blocks. And so those blocks are going to go into a car file, which is tiny for a car file. It's like every time you touch something, you're sending a car file to Web3 storage. And so that's my transaction boundary. But then there's like an acceleration that I can do where I take all the car files for a whole database and make it into one car file. And like usually that's going to be small in the context of an HTML payload. So you can just hydrate your HTML from the car file that you attach to it for like an accelerated loader. So that's like where I am now. Encryption is on the car file level. And then it's, I guess, optional, but it's going to be on by default. And it uses like essentially a one-time pad, a shared key for symmetric encryption for the car file. And then it's up to you how you manage that. I think people will want to have like a MedusaNet style re-encrypt service on a smart contract that makes copies of the database available for people. But because the way that I split the transactions like this and the way that everything's pluggable, what you can do is you can encrypt car files and send it to Web3 storage, and that's under your own personal key that you're not really going to share. You can have other people you're collaborating with, and you can send those car files on a transaction boundary basis to them over a secure WebRTC channel. And then they can apply them to their own local store under their own key. And so as long as that channel is secure, then you don't have to worry about key sharing across the collaborators. So there's just a bunch, it gives you options. And I don't know how much of that I'm going to make up to the application. Yeah, I mean, I guess like and the event feed can do your chat room or whatever. So if I want to build a business like Mongo or Snowflake, yeah, I guess like I'm hoping I can get everybody who's developing on it to sign up for this almost free or like make a docs pull request or something. And then I have a demo to give. Yeah, let me just switch over to that. I just had a kid come in to say hi. Okay, so I built this as kind of my test ground, and I can go into, I've had, it's kind of based on an old to-do MVC that I had around that had multiple lists. And so I'll go to my building apps list and I could check off things like, basically I could check everything off. And then you'll see over here, this was the history. And here we are now. And I can roll back to the beginning of time. And like this JW5I, that's everything. Here's the beginning of time. Like here's something in the middle. But now let's I just need to fix the UI here. There's a tree happening, right? So if I go like and do some other pattern, and now here's the beginning of time, and here's the pattern I did, and here's everything, right? And here's like coming up from the tree on the pattern. So I can kind of, and then yeah, if you just do like, oh, I guess yeah, we're already logged in. So if I look under the network tab, there's going to be maybe some car files going upstream. But I'll do that in another demo. So I think that's everything I have to share. There's like, I don't know. I think I'm about halfway to MVP. I'm probably about to ship beta. And then we'll, see how people like it. Thanks for letting me share.
Thanks. Yeah, so when I first heard about it, I basically tweeted that finally someone is building that I also had on my mind for years, because I'm also come from the CouchDB world. And then when I joined Protocol Labs, it was like, hey, this like CouchDB on steroids, so I need to build something like this. So it's great to hear. And now that I basically got an in-depth dive, it's like, it's even more so what I wanted to build. Because like did I understand correctly that you're basically with the Prolly trees, you want to do the same thing that CouchDB is doing with the having the aggregations inside the tree, basically. So basically, if you aggregate everything, you know already on the root what the result is.
Yeah. That plus the replication is so much easier because everyone's using a global address space with the Prolly tree style deterministic IDs.
One thing which I remember being a problem in the CouchDB days was, which I'm not sure if it's a problem here as well, is the we thought about doing like if you do duplications of a bigger data set, that we can basically prioritize things. So we can say, I don't know, like first send the text messages and then send the image or something like this. So have you thought about this use case as well, like for a future like thing, or do you just like probably don't care and just stream the CIDs and that's it?
The intelligent loading of stuff is going to be, there's all kinds of parts you can accelerate that I haven't got into yet. So I talked about the car file acceleration, basically loading a whole data set from only the identifier of its root node, with no like kind of graph sync acceleration it's just slow, right? It's like that many round trips, however deep the graph is. And so it works. But it's not, I mean, even if it does work, there's so many hops that you start like running into timeouts or like your inevitable, kind of gateway errors or something to get a whole app up. So doing the car file acceleration, which I'm pretty sure like Web3, I just haven't written it yet, but I can load like instead of loading 700 blocks, I can load 65 car files. And that'll help. But that's why as soon as I can do that, there's gonna be motivation to just load one car file, which is super easy to repack. Like I kind of like have the code already. I just have to give it all the car files.
I guess you could also then basically construct your car files in the way you want. So basically already on storage time or like producing time, you could say, I create one car file for which links to images and one car file for text, and then you first transmit the one for text and then
yeah, totally. So there's like the semantics that are different compared to normal IPFS is it's kind of a closed world semantic. You assume that if you're collaborating with somebody, they have the car files that you need them to have. And so yeah, you can go to the network and get them if you don't have them. But if you're using this like kind of WebRTC for who's in the live pool type metaphor, then people are going to already have the car file that you want them to have. And so that's why the small car transaction boundaries matter, even if there is that accelerator thing. But then with the accelerator, like, I guess, yeah, that's like at some point, one of the cloud services will just be doing the repack for you. So it doesn't have to happen on the browser. Yeah.
Cool.
Do you think that I really like the way you're positioning it, by the way, that the value proposition is in a particular audience that can get value from content addressing. Do you think that's going to limit your audience ultimately, or do you think you have a strategy to like? Do you think the value proposition is large enough to get beyond those that can see and feel the value immediately of content addressing to just people that want a decent web 2 back database backend in their browser?
I think that it positions the like Web3 benefits as only benefits without the like fussy costs, right? You're not having to, it doesn't even feel like it's an immutable data structure. You're just using it like you would Mongo, but it's easier to install, right? The default experience like is in the user's local storage. And so the way that like the shit's gonna hit the fan is a good kind of shit when there's enough developers out there who don't know and don't care, who are using it, to where the users start being like, what happened? Because Apple takes away local storage without asking, and so that's when you as an app developer will learn to turn on the Web3 replication or whatever.
What parts of this in IPLD terms, what parts are hard because of immaturity?
I had a hard time over the last week doing this debug exercise. And I think it's because when your project gets too big to fit in your head, it should be in TypeScript, and it's not right now. And so I went through and made it throw when it was getting stuff it didn't want, and all of a sudden I could write code using it. And so mostly it's just, and I'm kind of new to IPLD, so I maybe somebody who's been in it wouldn't have to do all that, but like, because the protocols are so flexible, like your stuff you're expecting to be your stuff being a CID all of a sudden can be a little bit unnerving.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if I've got any more good questions, but it's really very ambitious and exciting to see you've made so much progress. So
Thanks.
yeah, you're going to be presenting this again at IPFS thing. What sort of progress do you think you'll make by the next time you get to present it?
I have a bunch of like a kind of a rich and varied issue tracker, but I'm really hoping now that I'm done with this core kind of, basically I was having a problem with the internode merge on the Prolly tree where you could throw data at it that would cause it to like not be able to read itself. And so I fuzz tested it and found as many of those cases as I could. And I think I'm done, Chat GPT 4 is really good at fuzz testing. And so we got, and the library is 100% coverage on the tooling, like before you can merge anything. So we keep all the tests there. But I just kind of like restructured the recursion to be something that I could understand and added the part when you were, basically splitting internodes. And that was it's not much to look at when you're done, but I think I was also learning IPLD doing it. And now that that's done, all I want to do is write like example apps and unfeature flag these things that I have turned off, like the query engine that I was showing you that was powering the to-do list app. For every query, it rebuilds the index from scratch. And I joined Apache CouchDB early enough to remember when it did that. But all you got to do is unfeature flag it. It'll hang on to its latest index route that goes with that query. And that introduces semantics that I got to deal with, right? Like now the clock root of the whole database tracks not only the database, but also optionally the indexes that you have defined. Do we want to keep the index definitions around or right? And so that's like more of a plumbing question than a database question, but I got to do that kind of stuff. Better support for snapshots. You can grab anywhere on that tree on Alan's clock and have a consistent snapshot. And so I have optional rev style like updates on Couch where you can do MVCC if you want it, but I flipped the bit on it where if you want to write and you don't care, that's cool with me. It'll come up in conflict resolve time. So there's optional MVCC that it's easy to opt into, and then but there's little things about how like utilities for managing database snapshots that would make a lot of sense. So basically there's some old APIs I got to tear out that probably like go where you shouldn't go. And mostly example apps. I want to do, okay, here's where I could use help from this community. It'd be super fun. There's like 2 or 3 candidates for dang, I'm frustrated enough that ChatGPT won't get me access to my chat log history in the sidebar. that I built my own that works with local storage, right? Those are out there. I haven't had a chance to review them. I'm sure they're all okay. So picking one of those and then making it use fireproof would be a great example of how, I plan to do that eventually, but it'd be a great example of how AI matters, how proofs matter for AI.
I completely forgot to ask the obligatory questions from me is like, do you have plans to add geo support for your indexing?
I already added full text. It took me like 50 lines of code or something. So yeah, if there's a geo indexer that supports incremental that that's out there, like I'll npm install it. I'll put it on the dev dependencies and write a plugin for it.
Okay, yeah, because like that's obviously what I'm interested in, but yeah, but it's like, but it would need to be, but like how is your full text? Like, is your full text thing then also working with a Merkle tree, or is it just like an usual?
It's just an in-memory. I guess if I wanted it to be big, you'd have to write it on top of a Merkle. I'm excited to see. I haven't looked closely enough at what Rhizome's doing, and so I'm excited to see if Rhizome indexes can just plug and play. I could track them with my clock, and so there's going to be a lot of things you can do if your design goal isn't making something that everyone who does React apps would npm install, no questions asked. I just want it to be that, lightweight. And so
yep,
it'd be optional to bring in a WASM indexer.
Yeah, so I guess I would because I would be interested in really doing basically what Prolly trees are for B trees, doing something like this for R trees, or yeah.
If you're going to do that, call it a vector index and we'll use it for AI, and it's just worth 10 times more money, and it's just this.
Yeah, you could also do that. Yeah, that's the hot stuff currently. Yeah, that's true. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, it's also something that Mo wants to look into, effort into the geo Prolly trees or whatever you would call them.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wish we had a vector index already, because people can use that, especially in this context. You don't even need to have the horsepower to run a vectorization engine. You could, if you had a vector-enabled edge store, then vector-based services could use it as a cookie pouch.
Cool.
Yeah,
I'd be really interested to watch it, how you continue to connect it to AI. It seems like a difficult problem with what looks like an emerging landscape of AI as a service, where you don't have enough control to do reproducibility.
I just need the AI vendors to start signing their output, right? The same, you can't use the HTTPS session for non-repudiation, so they would need to actually do an API signature key.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it'd be great if we had access to underlying models and the ability to control seeds and that sort of stuff. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be willing to trust them about their models CID. I mean, for all that matters.
Yeah, fun. And you gotta hook in with AI to get all the buzzwords, but it's definitely a fun buzzword.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm legit excited about it. I think that the GPT kind of local or any one of the image generation things, especially any of the ones where there's a community that's making alternative UIs, it totally makes sense to get in there and see if there's additional utility that we can get by having Merkle with queries and all that.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for showing up and giving us this.
Yeah, cheers.
Yeah, this will be on YouTube. It does get some views afterwards, so there might be comments, questions on there. But I assume there were links in the presentation. Where would you direct people to go if they had more questions.
Oh yeah, if you wanted to go to fireproof.storage, that's going to get you to everything.
Right.
And then let's see if we're still on here. I'm going to show because Volker asked. Look, that's what it takes to integrate my full text. So what we're doing is we're just getting the changes off of the changes API that are like since this clock that we just keep in memory for this, right? The lifetime of the page. And then every time you query, you bring it up to date by pulling those changes in and then run the search on the latest version of the full text. But yeah, it's not much code with it. And, you know, it works.
Yeah, I guess you could do the same thing with Geo. So I wrote the first version for geo-indexing for PouchDB back then, which was also just in memory and just get the changes. And so I could probably do the same thing for Fireproof, I guess. So
yeah,
we'll see.
it would probably end up being like super fast on maps, because in the past I've done map work where the answer turned out to be to just load the CSV file and window off of that. But I bet this could be faster.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like as you are in the browser, usually your data set will not be insanely huge compared to like what browsers are currently capable of. So it's like you can just do it in memory and will probably be fine. So
yeah.
Cool. All right. Do we have any IPLD updates? So because I don't have any IPLD related things, or like I haven't wrote on any IPLD stuff in the past.
So I think last time I talked about the parallel traversal stuff that I was working on, and that's getting ready to land. So it's in Go IPLD Prime pull request 452. I think the interface is right that we want to export there. It's a preloader thing for traversals, and then in Lassie, as I think I mentioned, there's an implementation of that parallelizes the prefetching of blocks, so that you can do things like traversals over bit swap and control the parallelism of that, and have stuff running in the background. And you can do so you can end up having really good performance of So the aim for this one is it lands in Saturn, where these L1 nodes on Saturn are doing the thousands of fetches from IPFS and Filecoin at a time, and each one of those fetches could be parallelized. So this gives the control to spread out the fetching for each of those. Anyway, it's working quite nicely. It's a good model there, I think, and something to build off. There's a whole framework for controlling the parallelism in Lassie that I will eventually pull out into Go IPLD Prime for others to use. But if anyone who's listening to this has feedback on that, now's the time to jump in, because it might get merged very soon. That's all I got. That's the main thing I've been working on. That's IPLD.
I spent a bit of time on Rust multi-hash because there's a PR open, which is a huge refactoring into different crates and so on. But I will talk about it once it's done, because like it will still take a while. But this is more like really a refactoring. But the idea is that people need less breaking. So if we change something, we need less breaking change releases, because it's split into pieces and the core piece should usually stay the same. So that's the whole idea, because like as more and more people depend on multi-hash, it's really a pain if we just make a small change and then it's a breaking release technically, and then everyone has to update. And this should make things better. And I'm happy to get those third-party contributors to actually do those work. So I'm only reviewing it, but yeah. Cool. Then I guess the important thing for this meeting is that it used to be every 2 weeks, but moving on, we will do it every month because it's more convenient for Rod and me, which means that the next meeting will then be on April the 24th. Yes, yeah, that will be the next meeting. And if it turns out that we will basically have like more people show up or we have too much to discuss within 1 hour, we can always go back to every 2 weeks. But so far we haven't had that much, so it just makes sense to make it monthly.
We'll figure out how to best advertise it to get the wider audience. I think it's on the current IPFS community calendar, but there's probably other places to publish it now.
What's the like? I've never heard of Luma. Is this the?
I think that's where I saw it. I Googled for this meeting and I went to the place it wanted me to go, and there was a bunch of meetings that weren't this meeting.
Okay. Yeah. So I will. Yeah, I can check what this is about. Cool. Yeah. But I will certainly update the invite and the community calendar thing and the like description, the README of the repository and so on. So I will take care of these things. But yeah.
So maybe we should have just a very quick brainstorm of the kinds of things that we'd like to have covered. So people we'd like to invite to talk about their thing, if we've got any ideas. Because I've got a couple of ideas if you want to hear them.
Yes, sure. Yeah. So yeah, because like there's also like for basically people watching this recording, we would like to have like something like Jay Chris's talk for every meeting because it's just very interesting. And so if anyone has ideas, feel free to reach out our channels or issues or whatever. But yeah, Rod, if you have ideas, then
so top of mind for me, I'd like to get Irakli in to talk about the work he's been doing with UCANs and that ecosystem on IPLD and the way he's been using the tooling to solve problems there. He's doing some interesting stuff in schemas, which is he's currently got the most advanced usage of schemas in JavaScript. And he's making heavy use of them for UCANs, which is really exciting. So I'd love to get him on to talk through what he's doing and see where that's up to and where it's going. I wouldn't mind at some stage when the dust is settled if we could get Stephen on to talk about FEM and IPLD and how that works, because there's some really interesting juggling of IPLD as a state storage for FEM smart contracts, and the way that interacts with the chain and that whole dynamic of how to do WASM, Rust, interacting with the chain and all that. Like there's some crazy mechanics going on with IPLD I'd love to hear about. And related to that, I wouldn't mind having some kind of, I don't know if it's a panel or just a group discussion between maybe Volker, yourself, and Steve, and maybe others about the future of IPLD and Rust and what the potential is there to do some rethinking, because I know Stephen's done a lot of rethinking about where that could go, and I'd love to get that on the table. That's they're my thoughts.
Yeah, that's sounds pretty good. Also what might be like, it's not directly IPD related, but kind of is also like the work Michael is currently doing with his I forgot the name of the project, but
Blockbox,
kind of like car files, but like next generation car files, I would say, which is also kind of interesting, which I didn't fully grasp it yet, but sounds interesting.
It looks like he's got an interesting presentation shaping up for IPFS thing, I suspect. So maybe after the fallout from IPFS thing, it'd be a good time to have him to talk us through what he wants to do there, because he's very excited about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's this thing I noticed in his new style of stuff is in the current, or like, a lot of the IPLD code I've been working with has like a block, a put style semantic relationship with the blocks. Like, your own CID before you put it. And then the stuff he's been doing lately is more of a post semantic, right? You just post to the content and it gives you back the CID. And they're equivalent, but I feel like the post semantic is a lot more like forgiving in the application. And so I don't know, that might be a thing that'd be interesting to talk about.
It's kind of interesting because I would say that the early versions of IPLD had a post semantic, and we then moved with the multi-format stuff into a put semantic, I would say.
Kind of. I think we moved to the user is in control. We sort of pulled back in what the API offers and says, well, if you want to do put versus post, that's up to you. We'll give you the tools. And then we never stepped back out again and gave tools.
Yeah, so I might he's got a car transaction library that I can't use because I'm like hard coded with put semantics. But that might be if I was going to do a heavy lift, that doesn't change my test suite, it might be moving to that car transaction library.
Yeah, and of course, Chris, if you discover like any usability issues or edge cases or whatever, like which just doesn't work, yeah, feel free to open issues, because I would also say the IPLD, like especially I think in JavaScript, I'm not sure it's true, but like it's not like it's used, but it's also used by people that are just too deep into it. So it's basically good to get an outside perspective, or like, because
there's some things like only Chris can do compared to other people who barely know how to program, and that's like be like, fine, I guess sometimes CIDs aren't strings. Like normal people are going to be like, why, like where's my Baffy, and why is there a promise?
Yeah.
So usability things and bugs and feature requests, all those sort of things, it'd be great if you, when you stumble across them, file open pull requests and explain your use case, because that is one of the problems we have, is that we have such a sort of detached community that we don't hear back in these core libraries about what people really want to do.
And they end up doing it. Like the thing I just said, I don't know where I would find, like, to put my finger on it. I just know, like, because it's it comes up when you're like deep in the middle of debugging, like, why is this thing serializing like that and not like that? And then you're just JSON inspecting your stuff. I mean, I guess, yes, JSON inspect comes out weird unless you do it right, and nobody does things right. And so
that's a hard usability concern, because
it's an unnecessary await, which now it's like infecting all your upstream stuff with the, like if you move to strict post semantics, then you can assume that you have the CID and you don't need to like verify it or whatever.
There's this problem. One of the biggest problems at the core that we have with async is the hashing libraries. So if we want to get access to the browser crypto, we have to promise stuff. And
I mean, that's why we just hash on the way in and treat it as a token on the way out, right?
Right. Yeah, there has been a discussion about possibly even moving away from that and using some of these userland implemented crypto algorithms. Where we
I think it's legit. Like, async crypto makes sense. It's just I don't think it actually has to infect the CID implementation.
Well, I don't think there are promises in the CID implementation. You're probably hitting it in other places.
Factory can be it.
Right. Well, so that'll be in JS multi-formats. If you can put your finger on the thing that maybe open an issue, and we can probably connect it with some existing discussions that we're having, because Irakli also has ideas about refactoring the CID interface to be, I don't know, more interesting. There's alternative ways of representing a CID that mainly he has explored. That we sort of,
I mean, I think there's how it looks, and then there's whether or not you have to await it, and getting away from the await would be just as big of an impact.
Yeah, but that goes for a lot of things.
But wouldn't like isn't exactly the point of if you have a post semantic, is it when you then need the await because you need to do the crypto stuff, and if you have a post semantic, you don't because you already have the hash and everything?
No. If you do a post semantic, then you treat the token generation as opaque, right? You're letting the collection decide on the ID. And so you post your data and you get back an ID, and like it could be a string and you're just done with it.
Okay, yeah. Yeah,
there's probably a discussion there that Irakli will have opinions on. So
yeah, that it probably could, like, it sounds like something could be built on top of what we have, perhaps.
I think so. I mean, I think that's why I want to move to these. So if I move to car transactions, I have to go do the line level changes for that, and then I think I can. That makes me forward compatible for the blocks stuff.
All right. Is there anything else? If not, then as always, we have a after party. So basically, if the live stream closes, we still hang out in case someone has something that they want to share but don't want to share publicly. So feel free to hang out. And yeah, so then goodbye everyone on the stream, and see you in 4 weeks again.
And I'll see y'all in Brussels.
Yeah, bye.